Spanish interpreter available in the interpretation breakout room for those in need of Spanish audio, and we will both post a link to the recording upon adjournment for media outlets that need access to that footage, as well as having the press conference on demand at youtube.com/City of Dallas City Hall for your reference. Again, thanks for your patience. We'll get started momentarily. We're hoping our interpreter will be able to join before we begin.
All right, Catherine, I'm on the phone with the interpreter. We're going to get her joined, and she'll join midstream here a second.
At this time, I would like to introduce Christina da Silva, who will provide instructions for those in need of Spanish interpreter audio.
You can actually access the Spanish simultaneous interpretation by clicking the globe button on the left side. And there's a little caret that you have to click on that will allow you to select the Spanish interpretation. You can also adjust the audio settings so that you can hear the interpreter. You can also listen via you can also listen with closed captioning in any language by clicking the closed captioning button.
Will you also say that in Spanish, please, Christina?
Oh, sí. Usted puede escuchar la interpretación en español simultánea cuando uno hace clic en el botón de izquierda que tiene el globo terráqueo. Solamente tienes que hacer clic y ahí escoger el idioma español. También puedes ver todo el programa con subtítulos en español haciendo clic en el botón donde tiene las letras CC. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Christina. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're all warm and safe. And to begin our update today, we will go to the Emergency Operations Center at City Hall, where Travis Houston in our Office of Emergency Management will provide an update. Travis.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, everybody. My name is Travis Houston. I'm the Assistant Emergency Management Coordinator for the Office of Emergency Management. We're here in the Emergency Operations Center, which is still activated in response to the winter storm. Things have been relatively quiet this morning. The biggest thing happening in the EOC right now is getting sanding trucks to where they need to go. So, in addition to the just streets that need to get sanded, we're also looking at the priority places and helping get those triage for DFR, DPD, et cetera. Just before this call, we had our daily all hands call with our for departmental updates as well as our external partners. We heard from Encore, who informed us that at this time we have about 100 customers without power, and they're working as quickly and as safely as possible to get those restored. So that's very good news. We also heard from Atmos, who informed us that right now their systems are performing well and they've had no reported outages. I'm sure y'all are aware, but we heard from DART that at noon they will be suspending all service, so including bus service, through noon on Sunday. DPD reported that last night they had about 100, or I'm sorry, yesterday they had 162 accidents, and today since midnight they've had 42. Fortunately, there have been no major accidents and no fatalities there. Animal Services is at capacity, and so they would appreciate, and I think someone may be able to give more information on that, but they would appreciate any ability to adopt or shelter even on a short-term basis. Our libraries and rec centers are starting to open up, some of them. At Downtown Central Library, they hosted 56 individuals yesterday, and some went to Fair Park at the end of the day. As conditions approved today, we expect more facilities to open. Parks and Recreation plans to be operational at the facilities that they can get staff to safely from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. today. Sanitation is going to attempt starting operations today at 11 a.m., so that should be starting now. And I think that's all I have at a high level. Happy to stand by for any questions.
Thank you, Travis. Next, we will hear from Office of Homeless Solutions Director Christine Crossley, followed by Dallas Fire Rescue Chief Ball.
Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We have, let me see. Excuse me, as of last night, we had over 800 guests stayed with us at shelter last night, along with 5 dogs and 1 cat. We are currently extending activation of the inclement weather shelter through Tuesday morning, due to the temperatures being so cold at night. And everything is going pretty well at Fair Park, with DART service stopping at noon. We are being helped by DFR and DPD in terms of getting anybody to Fair Park. If you see anybody who is outside, please tell them to get to the nearest shelter. That shelter can also make sure that they alert us for pickup through Dallas Connector and Stewpot. If there's an emergency, please let us know. Our calling also has vehicles out, and that is my current report.
Thank you very much. We will next hear from Dallas Fire Rescue Chief Ball, followed by Public Works.
Good morning. This is Justin Ball, Assistant Chief Emergency Operations for Dallas Fire Rescue. Yesterday was pretty much like the evening before, where none of our runs were out of whack. Things are going good. We had a few issues, and I'll talk about them. But first, I'll give the stats of the runs that normally we would expect to increase during this kind of weather event. So as far as power lines down, in the last 24-hour period, we've had 6, and our daily average is 5. So almost a daily average under normal weather conditions. Reported structure fires, we had 9. It's quite a bit more than usual, which we usually have 3.5. As far as structure fires working, we had 5, which we normally have an average of 2.5. We also had a 2-alarm fire, and we did get down to our threshold for a brief period on battalion chiefs being available to respond. We got down to 2, which we put a contingency plan in place that if we got down to 2 battalion chiefs, then myself and other staff chief officers would respond to fires and manage the fire. We were just down for 5 minutes, and then chiefs were injected back into the field for a response. So that plan almost went into place, but didn't. As far as motor vehicle collisions, we had 108, which is same as usual, same as our daily average under normal weather conditions. We're well aware that there's not many people out there driving because the roads are terrible. So, but nothing out of the norm there. As far as our emergency vehicles getting hit, we had 4 yesterday, and we usually have 1, so that's a bit higher, and that's to be expected. As far as cutting off water, we had 14, which is higher than usual. We usually have about 4, and we had 14, but we're well aware that often the leaks and the burst pipes come on the thawing. So when it heats up, that number's likely to tick up, but we have a plan in place for if it does, and we're ready. And I'll just get into something else, like every time we have some large event like this, but I would say particularly the last year's one, we learn a lot, and all the plans we put in place for this event were lessons learned from last year's big freeze. But every time something else comes up and decisions have to be made, and one of the issues this time around was our homeless population. They were, it came our way yesterday that there were, people were seeing homeless folks out there laying out there in this weather that's not compatible with life. And we made the decision that we didn't want anybody passing up a homeless person without letting us know, and we'll take care of it. So we put 2 rescues we utilized in a non-emergency capacity, and we utilized our MCHP members so any of our folks with the fire department or police department, if they came across any homeless person, that they would call it in, and we would send this non-emergency ambulance with an MCHP member to go and transport them to shelter. So we'll review that and review how we do that. We'll continue that plan during this event, and then shore it up and be even better for the next time. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we will next hear from Public Works, followed by the Department of Transportation.
Hatifi, Interim Director of the Public Works Department. We continue the sanding of major thoroughfares and addressing some concerns and requests that other departments or the citizen had. Nothing new compared to last night. Thank you.
Short and sweet, thanks. Next, we'll hear from Transportation, followed by the Department of Water Utilities.
Good morning, Gus Concordi, Director of the Department of Transportation. We continue to monitor the system performance. As of this morning, we have less than 10 signals on either flash or have some communication failures, but staff has been dispatched to look at them. And other than that, we don't have anything else to report at this time.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from Dallas Water Utilities Director Terry Lowery, followed by Sanitation.
Everyone, this is Terry Lowery, Director of Dallas Water Utilities. I have all of our, we're properly staffed in all of our areas of operation. Our 3 water treatment plants and 2 wastewater treatment plants are operating as expected at this time. Public Works, we're coordinating with them on sanding operations. And as Chief Ball mentioned, while we've had a slight uptick in our burst pipes calls, we've had 12 over this storm period where we normally would have 1 or 2 a day. We do anticipate those to increase as the temperatures rise, and we are prepared to staff with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Next, we will hear from Sanitation, followed by Dallas Animal Services. If we don't have someone from sanitation on, that information may be found in the weather alert page linked from the front page of dallascityhall.com. With that, I'll ask for an update from Dallas Animal Services, please.
Yes. Hang on. Let me get my video on. Sorry, guys. Hopefully it's working. There we go. So like, as was mentioned, we're at capacity here at DAS. So our kennels are essentially full at this time. We are open today to the public between 1 and 6 p.m. and then through the weekend. However, we're not really sure what to expect in terms of adopters and fosters coming out just because of the roads and the conditions, as everyone already mentioned. But we hope that they do come out because we are very, very full. And we do also offer opportunities for people to adopt and become fosters online and then schedule a pet pickup when the roads are a little bit safer. So that is an option as well. And then the only other update I have is that we are responding to calls for service related to the weather from pets being outside. Our field team is working around the clock. So if we are encouraging pet owners to bring pets inside, limit the time that they're spending outside, make sure they have adequate shelter, all of that. And then if residents see pets that are outside for a prolonged period of time without access to fresh water or shelter, they need to call 311 and report it to us so our officers can respond. And that is all from me.
Thank you. And at this time, we will take questions for as many rounds as time permits by media outlet. The first will be WFAA Channel 8, followed by KXAS NBC 5. Not hearing from WFAA 8, we'll move on to NBC 5, followed by CBS 11. There's no question from CBS 11. Then we'll move on to WBAP.
Doing NBC 5 there.
Sorry, yes. Oh, sorry.
Right.
NBC 5, no question. CBS, you're up.
When you were talking about the standing trucks and prioritizing where the standing trucks were going, this was emergency operations that was talking about trying to figure out the prioritizing where those trucks were going. What are the priorities you're looking at, and how are you deciding where they go?
Thank you for that question. So what we're really looking at is critical infrastructure. So the primary thing that we're seeing is areas in which a emergency vehicle needs to get through. So whether that's a fire station's approach or a road that they need to get down, or some of those types of things, it's primarily that critical infrastructure. And then for just general streets that need to be sanded, as Public Works continues to work through that, for those, we're trying to get through the 311 system so they can be logged and categorized and worked through through their priority process. But obviously, we want to make sure that our police vehicles and fire engines are either unstuck or able to move or able to get in and out of their stations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now move on to CBS 11, followed by WBAP.
Oh, that was me. I was CBS 11.
Sorry, WBAP, followed by KDFW Fox 4. Fox 4, followed by NBC News. NBC News, followed by Spectrum News 1. Spectrum News 1, followed by Fox News. Fox News, followed by the Dallas Morning News. Dallas Morning News, followed by KERA.
Hey, good morning. It's Everton Bailey from the Dallas Morning News. I was wondering, how much have the icy conditions on the roads impacted emergency responses to 911 calls and animal service calls and other, calls for service, especially on residential streets?
I'll answer that. We won't have a clear picture till after we run the stats for the response times. Obviously, the response times are slightly delayed, but again, when our apparatus are out there and they notice an area that needs a sand, then they call the appropriate authority and get that taken care of. But we have all our apparatus use chains that allows them to respond safely at reduced speed.
And just a quick follow-up, sorry, because Chief Ball, you mentioned earlier that, 4 vehicles have been hit during because of the weather conditions. Do you have any other anecdotes like that in terms of how the roads have impacted responding to emergency calls?
We don't. We have blockers that we put in service. We put as many blockers in service as we could that would prevent our frontline apparatus getting hit. But again, like our apparatus have the chains. But when they're parked is when they're getting hit. I don't know the exact details on each apparatus that was hit, but it's likely when they were parked, a car skidded into them or something like that. But there was none. I would say there was none of our apparatus that were hit and had to be removed from service, so they weren't hit that badly at high rate of speed.
Thanks. Our next question is from KERA, followed by KRLD. KERA. All right, moving on to KRLD, to be followed by Aldea.
And this is kind of low-hanging fruit, but I know we don't have the rolling blackouts like we did last year, but kind of contrast how the response was this year, your preparations and how you feel things have gone. Were there any surprises? And I'll let you answer. Thanks.
So, obviously this storm has played out much differently than last year. And I think from the Office of Emergency Management standpoint, and I'll just speak to that, I think the most critical thing just comes down to power. And it showed me at least just how much that changed the entire way that we were able to respond last year compared to this year. I think that, people being able to stay home, stay warm, have access to news and updates from us, I think was really important this year. We just didn't have that last year. Everyone was constantly watching the Encore outage map and just, hoping and we had been assured by our partners that they were in a really good place and that they were ready to respond. But, knowing last year, I think it's our job as emergency managers to sort of think of what that worst case scenario is and hope for the best, plan for the worst. And so that's really where our headspace was. And we're very thankful that, at least from that standpoint, nothing's particularly easy about responding and managing this type of incident, but it definitely changed. It definitely made it a lot more straightforward without the massive widespread blackouts. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. One thing I want to get, it says Rocky Vaz on the screen. Are you Travis?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my name is Travis Houston.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I just also dropped his name and title in the chat for anyone else. KRLD was just answered. So next is Aldia, followed by Univision.
Hi, this is Imelda García from Aldia, Dallas. I have some questions. For Dallas Animal Services, how many reports of animals at the have you received? I mean, how many have you responded? And for emergency management, what about those warming buses? Were those operating in these 2 days or not? In what areas were they operating? And I don't know, and maybe for Chief Ball, at what point can people leave their homes safely? I mean, because temperatures will start to rise and the roads safe for people to go out. Thank you.
Okay, I heard 3 questions there this round. So it was first for Dallas Animal Services.
If you guys can jump to the other 2 people, I'm gonna try to find those numbers for her because I think I have it, but I want to double check.
Okay, I saw Chief Ball's already ready. Go ahead, Chief Ball.
Okay. Yeah, when is it safe for people to get out? Honestly, when the roads dry up. The roads, I drove in here today and the roads are terrible. It's like on an ice rink, some of the areas, particularly when you're not on the highway. The highways are a bit better. I wouldn't advise people, if it can be avoided, I would stay home until the roads are dried up. And as far as being out in the elements, even not in a vehicle, it's a bit too cold. So I would advise wait till this event's over unless it's totally necessary.
If Travis is with you, Chief Ball, he can speak to the mobile warming relief. We also have warming relief available currently at several Dallas Public Library branch locations, all of which can be found at dallascityhall.com and dallascitynews.net.
Thanks, Catherine. So as far as the mobile coach buses, what we did this year is we had buses on standby, ready to go. So they were already in town, deployable, and the way that our plan worked is that as we start seeing outages, as we start seeing requests, if we don't have a warming center that can fit that need, then those buses could be quickly deployed to that location. And thankfully, it didn't get there for this event. At least, it's still plenty cold outside, but at this time, we don't have any mobile coach buses deployed, but we do still have them on standby if that need arises.
Thanks, Travis. And now we'll go back to Leah with Dallas Animal Services.
Thank you, and I appreciate y'all being patient with me as I looked this up. So yesterday, and this was as of about 5 p.m., so it's a little early. There may have been some calls after that time, but there were about 70 weather-related calls, pet weather-related calls, and then an additional 40-ish related to welfare checks. So typically, those would be dogs being left outside in the weather conditions. Of those, for the most part, our intake was relatively low yesterday, which is good because, again, we are full. And I don't have the numbers of how many resulted in us taking in any of those pets in front of me. But I can say that last year during the winter storm, our service requests related to weather rose significantly the week of the winter weather, and we kind of are anticipating that this year as well. We won't have those numbers obviously until after a few days, and I will be happy to get those numbers to anyone if they're interested in that once things settle down a little bit. But we're definitely anticipating more calls throughout the weekend related to weather.
Thank you. Next, Univision, followed by Bisnow.
This is kind of following up on what Chief Ball said, but how effective is the sand and whatever is being used to treat the ice on the roads? Because even though, we have seen that a lot of people are staying home, there are those who absolutely either have to go back home or they're going to have to drive in these conditions. So not to ask how safe are the roads because they're clearly not safe. But what is there like maybe a best time of when people should try to either head out or get to where they're trying to go?
I heard two questions. First, to the efficacy of the sand mixture, I think I would direct that to Public Works if there's availability to discuss.
Yes, ma'am. Ali Hazafi, Interim Director of Public Works. The sand and salt mixture that we use is a standard practice that most of the municipalities are using right now. As Chief mentioned, we don't recommend any driving over icy roads, if it's not necessary, of course. However, please note that, we monitor and we focus more on the thoroughfares. And as people drive more on the streets with sand and everything, as temperature is rising tomorrow, we're hoping that, the streets goes back to almost normal condition. But again, if we don't recommend driving in the cold and in icy roads if it's not necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Biz now, followed by Estrella 29. Estrella, followed by New York Times. Not hearing from Estrella, we'll go to New York Times. Is there anyone else in the conference who has not yet had a chance to ask a first question? All right, we'll quickly go back for a second round, starting with Dallas Morning News.
Again, with the temperatures rising in a couple of days, is flooding a concern for the city? And what specific plans are in place to prevent it becoming an issue as the temperatures get higher?
Yeah, I'll address that. I don't believe flooding would be a major concern unless some major water pipe burst. Like I said earlier, we do anticipate more water pipes bursting as the frozen pipes thaw out and the temperature rises, but there wasn't enough precipitation to warrant any flood risk at this time.
Gotcha. Just to follow up, not necessarily from burst pipes, but more so from all the ice that's melting. If maybe this is more of a Public Works or water utilities question. If there's any concern about the sheer amount of water that could be coming just from the melted ice in the next couple of days.
I'd say that's not going to be an issue. I've not looked this up or anything, but I think there's the amount that would equate to maybe 3 inches of rain. So with that being thawed out, I don't see that being an issue at all. Does someone else want to address it as well?
Chief Ball, this is Terry Lowery, Director of Dallas Water Utilities. I would concur with what you said. We always watch for flooding concerns, but at this point, that's not an elevated risk.
All right, KRLD, do you have another question? Followed by Aldea. LP Phillips is not here. Aldea, do you have?
Right,
you are. Go ahead.
No, they did such a great job. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Aldea, followed by Univision.
No more questions. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And last question to CBS 11. Go ahead. Sorry, Andrea.
Yeah, no problem. A couple of things. I wanted to ask, there was a comparison between this winter storm and last winter storm, and obviously there's some big differences, but I did want to ask if the city felt like there was more precaution from private entities or even school districts. We heard a lot of announcements Wednesday, maybe even Tuesday, about cancellations in advance for Thursday and Friday. I don't remember that in previous cases. Usually I feel like schools are canceling early the morning of. I don't think I've ever heard of Southwest Airlines just blatantly canceling all flights from Love Field. So, we've talked about there not being a lot of car accidents out there and there not being a lot of cars on the road. And I'm wondering how much of that is attributed to sort of private entities or school districts being proactive. And if that is something that came from conversations that you guys had with them, or if that was just something that they had done themselves.
Is Travis available from emergency management?
Yeah, Catherine, I can answer that. So the answer is yes. I think it made a huge difference, and I think that you're absolutely right. We saw a lot more cancellations from the private sector in closing down for the day, et cetera. Obviously, the school districts announced that they were closing much earlier than I think what is typical, and yeah, I think that was a major contributing factor to having less people out on the roads. And of course, the other big difference between last year and this year is the ice is a lot worse this year. So we're very thankful for that. It I think would have had the ice been as bad as it is now last year, it would have just been another compounding factor that would have made things really difficult. So in addition to that, I think that this was a really well forecast storm and the communication was good and people took that seriously. I mean, in addition to the general level of anxiety, I think that was just out there because of the last year's event. I can't say enough about our partners at the National Weather Service, how effectively they communicate both with the public and certainly with us. And that helps us then communicate out to the public as well. So, between those two things, I think it really made a difference.
And then I know we hear a lot about sort of what to do in advance in terms of like dripping faucets to avoid burst pipes. At this point, if people have frozen pipes, what do they do if they don't want to simply wait to see if they, they don't want to just wait until the thaw?
I don't have it. I don't have that expertise. Chief Ball, you said,
I mean, I can't.
or
address.
possibly
Terry
someone
Lowery
from
is
Dallas
on.
Water Utilities.
Dallas Water Utilities, Terry Lowery.
Hi, good morning again. Your question was not to wait. Typically, the first thing you want people to do is turn off their water. Sometimes we get calls, and I know the fire department as well gets calls when people have burst pipes and they don't know how to turn off their water service. So knowing where to do that is primarily important to taking care of that. If you have a burst pipe, you're going to know if you have frozen pipes. One thing that this storm is different than what we had last year is the duration of the low temperatures and the amount of time that we've had to experience below freezing. So as I said, our calls are slightly elevated, and the chief said the same thing. So at this point, I think most people are in pretty good shape. We have some tips up on the city's website and also on the water utilities website.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to clarify, I know they were, fire said that there were 4 emergency vehicles hit. Is that today or is that yesterday and today?
Chief Ball?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, that was over the last 24 hours. And like I said, we normally average 1 a day. With an event like this, I wouldn't, we don't want any, but I wouldn't put 4 as a colossal amount. I'll also address what I was going to say about the pipes freezing. On the last weather event, the power was out, which made the pipes freeze. Everybody's home using their water, and the fact that their heat's on in their house or apartment is what would prevent the pipes freezing also. So that's one of the differences between this time and last time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we sign off for the weekend? If not,
Bailey from the Dallas Morning News again. I'm sorry, just one more question. It's in regards to the 2 ambulances being reserved to help transport homeless people to shelters. I was wondering how many people have been transported or assisted so far, and can you repeat what the public should do to get aid to those who are unsheltered?
So in the last 24-hour period, we transported 35 to a shelter. And we know that the shelter has shuttles also, but we've instructed police and fire, if they pass a homeless person, to call our 911 dispatch because we don't want anybody left outside. Of course, this is a temporary procedure that we have in place due to the extreme weather. So we'll have to talk about moving forward, how we're going to manage this, and likely things will change a little bit. But like I would say, if anyone sees a homeless person and they're laid out in this, and I'd encourage them to call 911 and we'll take care of it.
And thank you, Chief Ball. This is Christine Crosley, Director, Office of Homeless Solutions. Just to say that we are, as I've said, deeply grateful for the transportation help from DPD and DFR to make sure that people are getting to the shelters. With dark closing down at noon, we are asking people, if, as I've said before, if you see folks who are out, if you can even get them to the nearest shelter, that shelter can call us and call DFR, and we can try and coordinate transportation. So anything you can do to help make sure that people are not staying outside is deeply appreciated.
thank you. And Marina from New York Times, your hand is raised.
And I may have missed these. I apologize because I came in late, so forgive me. But have any that y'all know of city facilities been damaged or experienced any kind of damage? I'll just give my 3 questions first. And then, again, I may have missed this. Chief Ball, were there any weather-related fatalities? And then probably Christine, how many total across all available facilities sought shelter?
I'll take the first question. So far, there's been no damage reported to city facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll address the second question. To my awareness, that we've not had any weather-related fatalities or real bad injuries. On the multi-alarm fire last night, we did have somebody transported to the hospital from smoke inhalation, and I believe there was 4 deceased dogs as a result of that fire, but that was a fire and not really weather related. So I believe that the effort put forward by us and Homeless Solutions could have probably helped with minimizing the injury or death to some homeless people.
And as for the last question, I don't have a specific number, but I can tell you that in addition to the 800 plus at the automobile building shelter, all shelters across the city are at capacity and actually took in even more people than they normally could.
And
thank you, Christine. And thank you, Chief Ball.
Thank you all for being with us today. For the latest updates throughout the weekend, please keep an eye on the weather alerts information at the front page of cityhall.com. Warming relief locations and city facility closures will be updated throughout the weekend at dallascitynews.net. And we don't believe that the Emergency Operations Center